Hey, folks.
Okay.
Hello.
I'll give it a couple minutes. Fostem, some of Fostem replies are out. At least I got some. I don't know whether any of the other dev rooms have responded yet.
Mike got accepted. I'm not sure what he submitted.
Nice. Yeah, Marco and I submitted one on SBOM stuff.
Did you get it?
Yeah, we got.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
For the AI one, I didn't get anything yet.
Yeah, I think y'all just managed separately by individuals, so. Awesome. Awesome. I'll give it another minute until we get started. Awesome. All right. Welcome to the GUAC maintainers meeting. This is a weekly maintainer meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted online. Participation in this meeting is inherent to the LF antitrust policies, as well as the LF and OpenSSF code of conduct. More information is available on the LF and OpenSSF sites. Cool. So I think we have couple new folks, or these returning folks on the call. Does anyone want to say hi? Introduce yourself.
I suppose that's me. Hi, my name's Matt. It's been some time, Brandon. I met with Mike Lieberman on Friday. We hadn't caught up in a good year, or half a year. And we got to talking about observability, and I've been looking at using GUAC in a couple different contexts to integrate with a project out of the CNCF called the Landscape Graph, which is a big graph of all the open source projects and GitHub history and blogs and books, all the things. And there's a big chunk of it that covers what GUAC tracks in terms of data, and the artifacts and all of that. And so I'd much rather integrate than build. In addition, we had been talking about using a graph database as a data store for GUAC instead of Postgres. I did a pile of work with Postgres over the last couple of years when I was at Apple using GUAC at Apple, and some of the experience of like figuring out why this SBOM makes the ingester component like go off into space, or just some of the when running things at scale, getting a handle on where the bottlenecks are and what's going right and what's going wrong were a challenge. So we were talking about everything from improving the observability of things to leveraging some of the data to answer some of the questions that I have in ancillary projects for which the supply chain and all of its glory is the right data to answer questions. So I'm here sort of as a fly on the wall, but moving forward, I have time that I didn't have last year to do some actual work. So I'm just listening for now. And then lastly, Mike had talked about, he said, if you wanted to come talk about observability and stuff, which I don't know that that's needed. It seems like it's more of an integration thing that might just be needed. Then you welcome me to that, but I kind of insisted that I'd rather be a fly on the wall for a little while first. I like to listen first. So hi, thanks for having me.
That's great to see you again, Matt. And I know you have a lot of knowledge and experience in this space, so we are always happy to to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, there was another thing that came up lastly. I forgot. In the CNCF, there's an effort to make an ontology for Kubernetes. I made an issue for this a couple of years ago, and there wasn't really interest. But in an unrelated tag, in an unrelated context, they started trying to figure out how could we build an ontology for Kubernetes and what would we want to do with it. And so that kind of, we talked a little bit about that too, ontologies in general, right? So that's another area of nerditude for me.
That's awesome. I think if you think it would be interesting, maybe at some point, whether it's this call or the community call, it would be nice to hear a little bit more about the landscape efforts. I'm assuming this is more than that poster, the eye chart that CNCF has, right? I think that's
the landscape. The landscape graph is a totally different thing that uses some of that same data in an effort to not have an eyesore chart, build a labeled property graph. And I'm almost done, got a bunch of stuff already in that it processes the history of GitHub, all of it, and can put that into the graph.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, and hi, Chris. Also put in chat, but Chris is a TPM for OpenSSF that's just listening in. Okay. I think we can go ahead and continue. It looks like we have a couple agenda items today. First one has Nathan's name on that. By the way, we posted the ladder climb, so congrats to everyone. We should announce that during the community meeting, which I think we should talk about today as well on the agenda. First one, did someone put this in or Nathan put this in directly? Include the handler for
I put it on for Nathan. I had followed up with him a little bit and he said it's still blocked on a maintainer discussion, which is marked in the comments for a while back. So I don't know if he needs to be here for it. We can do it another time, but it's just, it's been open for a while. So I wanted to see if we could get it closed out.
Yeah, so the issue with this one is that it needs to figure out the version range that's in the graph for it to create the vex statements for it. Because it could give you a version range per the spec.
But we can't resolve it.
Right, because we don't know what versions are in the
and you would have to backfill a new version.
We could query for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So either you read query for it, which we don't want to do.
I think it has to be query story though. This goes into the software identifiers conversation that we're having right now. It's like here's a declaration of a CPE or identifier, and then because if not, for every single insertion, you have to go check all the different conditions, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's why it's been sitting open for such a long time. It's a complicated problem. It's not something that we can solve.
Is there a middle ground that we can close this out, like put in the versions but not match it, and then have whoever's querying it? So is that what's?
Well, you have to the vex has to be created at a specific package. So you can't. Package version.
So this PR is doing it not in the. Where is it doing the logic? In the parser.
Yeah.
I think what we're saying is that this probably has to be in the client instead.
How do you store it in the first place?
I guess like a certified bad, right? So the client has to do additional work. The query versions.
Because our certified vex is not, it needs a version ID. All right. Not it can't be at the name level.
Yeah, it's a resolution, right?
I mean, not that we've encountered the use case yet. So we haven't encountered a use case where a cyclone DX SBOM is generated that gives you a version range at this point. I don't even know if anything does it even, any of the tools generated that way.
We have some CSAF documents that works in a version ranges. I don't know. I mean, I'm not familiar with the issue, so I don't want
to. How does it have that? How do you handle that then?
Yeah, it was tricky, but basically the new schema in what we are doing is actually trying to store the version ranges as closest to the document, right? Or VEC statement as close to the document. So the VEC statement can say something about specific Perl or version ranges of the Perl, or even something on a higher level, like the whole SBOM or project. And then it's a tricky part to do that
on the client side.
Yeah, querying stuff, right? Because we had a similar issue trying to use GUAC because we were attaching those things, but if SBOM is not there, you can't really figure out is there any particular pearls. So then your ingestion is order dependent, right? You need to have SBOM first in order that VEX to be able to figure out that something is if you know what I mean. So if something says like this is the version, but we don't know where this version is. So we can't ingest certified VEX on the ingestion time until the SBOM is already there, and that was a huge problem. So
I kind of think this is a weird one where I think at least when we were talking about the VEX use case in the CISA group, right? I think it was pretty much supposed to be a companion SBOM document, but it seems like there is a use case of it to act as almost like a inverse CVE entry. And maybe in those cases we should treat it as a reverse CVE entry, and then you need to have a certifier that kind of does the same thing as what CVE would do, right? It would go in and then like make the certify the vulnerabilities or certify the back statements, right? Yeah. So maybe that would be that's an idea. Like whenever you see a version range, you just treat it as a we do have to come up with some sort of encoding that it's not. Yeah, it's a vulnerability entry. Which we don't have directly today.
So you're saying you certify that? I'm like, I guess I don't get it.
Yeah, that could be. I'm thinking more of like kind of like, you know, what Dijon showed on like, here's a bunch of vulnerability databases, and then like today we kind of implicitly take OSV or depth of depth or some other data source to do the matching, right? So we say like, here's an identifier, let's go check these databases, and then we're gonna say certify this thing has a vulnerability. The VEX, maybe we can call it, instead of VEX document, this is a VEX I don't even know what to call it, but basically like a VEX disclosure database, right? It would be a similar thing to say like these particular things don't have vulnerabilities, which arguably like doesn't sound like the right place anyway. Like it sounds like someone should just fix the CPE entry. Yeah, so maybe they are anti like corrections errata to CVE entries that you want to trust or not. Yeah, I don't think that use case is like fully played out in my mind yet.
Well, it would be per application though, right? The VEX. Like in this context, it is not vulnerable or it is vulnerable, whatever, right? So it has to be, can't just be a generic VEX data document or like a data store for a package. It has to be in this context for this particular SBOM, let's say, for this particular application. It's not being affected.
So what you're saying is this is just a one-to-many reference for like one VEX document to multiple SBOMs.
No, it won't be, right? It would be specific to this SBOM.
Then what's
It's not because it's not giving because well, it's giving you a range of I don't know him. Yeah, I don't know why it's giving you a range. If it's
yeah.
that's true. I mean, unless it's like you know, like it's Maven or something that where it's using multiple instances of the dependency, different versions of the same dependency.
The range shouldn't matter, right? Because like at some point the back statement is saying the CVE, you're not affected by the CVE. It doesn't really care about the
You're not affected by the CVE in the specific context, right? For that particular application. That's what that's what the VEX is telling you. It's not a general statement.
But like
It has to be specific.
But I also think it's many to many. At least what I saw. So how historically the CSF was used in Red Hat. I don't know if it's correct or not, but this is what I'm trying to. This is the mess I'm living in at the moment, right? So you have a CSF advisory, right? Which mentions multiple different products and saying this, but you know, and it can say like these multiple CVs of affects or doesn't affect these products and these packages. I mean, it can be super generic. It can say just My favorite use case is like, there's a Vim in rel, and it's under investigation for now. That's all we want. And so how do we model that to show this is the current state of the advisory, right? Because there's a CV for this, and we are investigating is rel currently affected or not, and then there'll be further advisory saying, yeah, version 7 is affected, version 8 it's not, and then there will be advisory saying, okay, even version 7 is patched starting this version, right? So that's where the ranges come, because they usually say, we know there's something inside of this product that might be affected by this CV, and it's probably the range 2.x, right? Or targeting the stream of the release. Again, I know this is like a super specific to how Red Hat so far has done things. I'm not sure if it's generally applicable, but as far as I saw, the CISA specification supports this, and maybe it's been misused, but it is how it is, right?
I think it's likely gonna have to be like that for a while. Yeah. In that case, I feel like it's how you start treating it today, kind of like a CV report. Then, and so it's like you have a bunch of documents and a bunch of software, and then you kind of have to do the matching across them. Okay. So it's a SBOM VEX matching process.
I mean, and the Vex is particular to that application or SBOM, right? Whatever it's describing. So when you actually query for it, it has to be in that context.
Yeah, so it's like today we don't have anything to represent like the vulnerability database entry, right? Advisory.
Well, there should be a VEX statement. That certified VEX should be advisory for certain component within the SBOM, right?
Yeah, I feel like the certified VEX is kind of like the resolve matching, right?
Yeah.
But I think in this case, I don't know whether we need a VEX database format, like something that we can like how we query OSV to get the matching. I think maybe we need a way to query VEX to get the matching, and so. Or maybe someone should solve this. Create a server for it.
I don't have a good answer for this. I don't know.
Is there a kind of format for data vulnerability databases that is generic and programmatically used as well? I suspect the answer is no.
I think OSV is universal as it gets, right, today, or not?
Well, but you can't ingest like I know some people, like we have some teams in cloud that their entire business is like copying the CVE, the MITRE database offline, because MITRE doesn't actually have a SLO on uptime. So
what have we also been doing in version 1 is, so there's a Git, today there's a GitHub repo of all the CVEs, which can be used quite nicely. I can show you. CV list. Give me just a sec. Here it is. So one of the things that we did for our product, so on top of the GUAC, because we needed this more information, there's another service that basically was cloning and rebasing from this project, ingesting everything into the database so that we can provide scores, more descriptions, and things like that are not in the graph, right? But back to the parts point, I also think like we the CV record is kind of an advisory, but as you said, like there can be more, right? So this is a CV and this is the original CV record, and we treat it like a low-level advisory, but then also can come OSV files for the same CV, Red Hat CISA files for the same CV. So it's all the same, multiple advisories for the same CV, explaining how this vulnerability is basically giving you a WAC statement for this vulnerability in different contexts, right? So this product is affected, this product is not affected, this is under investigation and things like that.
So how are you doing the version mapping for your schema with the ranges?
Yeah. So yeah, there's a table that stores particular version ranges, right? So, and I think yeah, trying to match that based on a couple of familiar. So is it Assembler or is it Node.js mapping? There's a schema. There's a project you probably know about it that tries to specify that for pearls, how that can be expressed as well. So basically, different ecosystems that have different algorithms for matching, but basically all of them are pretty much similar. So you need to have a schema, you need to have low version, high version, and then is it inclusive or exclusive, the ranges. And then we try to basically querying things to like, here's a version, does it fit this range or not, right?
Yeah. So when you ingest a new package, do you do the matching against everything? Like, oh, is there like a batch of that once in a while? Like, go share everything?
No. So packages in SBOMs we ingest as they are. All the packages have exact versions, right?
Yeah.
But ingesting advisories, we have support for ingesting ranges. So saying on the advisory side is where the ranges are important, right? Where you can say, and then querying things, you can say, okay, here's an advisory saying Perl with namespace name this is affected in the ranges between 2 and 3. Can you find me an SBOMs that have this kind of Perl that matches this version range, right?
So do you do that on query time?
Yeah.
But if you go to the SBOM, you can see all the advisory as well, right? So
What do you mean?
like if you, let's say you in your interface, if you click on a SBOM, do you see the list of advisories as well, right?
Yeah.
So how's that is it resolution done by scanning the advisory table and then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So find me all. Find me find me all the let me try to repeat the query in my mind. So find me all the S bombs that have like a Perl in this version, in the version range that is in, that is all these advisories in. There's a multiple table here, but find me all vulnerabilities that that I can find SBOM that I can find in this SBOM that are talking about this Perl in this version range. Does that make sense? So
yeah, I think the query makes sense. I think I'm kind of surprised at how well it scaled.
yeah. So this is all work in progress, and I'll let you know.
Okay.
As time goes by, but it shouldn't be that crazy because
I think it's just bottlenecked by the size of your vulnerability your advisory database. I think that's probably basically it's a full scan on the advisory database. So depending on how big that is, that may not be too bad.
Yeah. So basically, this is where I am for the last months or so, and I'm still dealing with this basic logic, and I hope soon we'll start, doing more proper scale testing and go with that. And so we can talk about it. I mean, I know we said like we will talk about the database schema next whenever that comes. Yeah, let's do that. And I really like to hear your opinions of is this a right approach? No, is there better ideas how to do it? So
okay. It does sound like so coming back to the topic. I think this particular PR, unfortunately, I don't think we have a good answer for Nathan.
But can you say something about scaling? So it shouldn't be that crazy, because like you first get your pearls from your SBOM, which it's not that big, right? It can be thousands, but it's, and then you find all the pearls reference from the advisory database. That reference basically
The
those
name.
kind of pearl name case type, right?
Yeah.
So it's not. It shouldn't be millions, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And then you narrow down later on by the version, right? So is this actually advisory talking about these pearls in this version range that are actually in these SBOM, right? So far it wasn't that crazy. I don't know if when we try to do it on a really big scale.
Yeah, I think we do some of that already, right? We like, is this version part of the version range? Remember, like we have that logic in GUAC also. So basically, it has to be done at query time. So that's basically what I'm hearing is like, yeah, this has to be done at query time, but then we just need a way to store this information, which we don't currently have a way to store it. We don't have a way to store versions.
Would certify VAX point to the so-called the now version as we created it, and then have a version range added on top of it?
Correct. Yeah, we don't have. It's not pointing a package name at this point, right? It can't be like, oh, at this package.
Well, we have the now. We created the now version, right? I remember because we didn't want anything to point to names anymore, so we created.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So in this case, we could say like, I think our feedback to Nathan is like, let's make it the now version and then add a field for range.
Make it the noun version? What do you mean?
The now version, the 0.
Oh no! So make it nothing?
Empty string.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Because that's what we do for the others, right? I think we did that refactor where we didn't want to point to a name anymore, so everything points to a version.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do have we have all these fields. We have the statement, status note, all those kind of fields that we could use to fill in like, hey, this version range is this. But then at query time, you still have to be able to parse that, right? Be like, okay, how do I know?
Yeah.
Right. Then at query time, you still have to figure all that stuff out. Be like, okay, now I know that which field contains a version range.
Yeah.
And then you pull it out and you map against it. So that could work. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I think Dejan brings up a good point where it's like, if we just look up based on the name, it shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah.
And if there are certain hotspots like Microsoft Windows or Adobe Adobe Acrobat or something like that, then we can, in the worst case scenario, we cache some of those hotspots. Okay. Path, I think it seems like you may have a better handle on this PR, but I'm happy to also just reply.
Yeah, I'm gonna write some notes.
Okay. I was a bit. Yeah, okay. For this particular thing, there seems to be an undocumented change of including the GraphQL client in as well.
Yeah, so we're gonna remove all that. So they'll get removed. We were thinking at the ingestion time, you would validate which versions were in the database and then map to them to those directly.
Yeah.
That was the reason why the GraphQL is there, but GraphQL removed them.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds a bit. It sounds like a recipe for potentially infinite loop as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not doing. That's why I was like, that's why it's been sitting open for a long time, because it's like, okay, this is not a solution.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Okay, I think we can move on to the next one. Ben's asking about meeting next week and the week after. I am going to be out the next 2 weeks as well.
Yeah, I kind of figured that would probably be the case for most people, but I wanted to double check before I asked the OpenSSF ops to cancel those meetings. Any objections to canceling both of them? Cool.
We have a community meeting this Thursday as well.
Yep.
Is that worth having this week? Is there
Yeah,
anything we want to talk about? Because I'm not sure. It's going to be very low attendance. So it might just be because we chatted about, you know, we got most of the new stuff, I believe. Yeah, and we did a lot of conversations last week about the air gapped. I think on the new, all the, you know, the Vex, all the new features were also demoed off already. Is that right, Ben?
The only thing that hasn't been demoed is the stuff that Robbie added in the 0.12 release.
I think I also prefer this to be like having Marvel audience rather than if it's just us. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. I think we
Yeah.
should cancel the community call this month, I mean,
Okay.
and do like a big one, like a, you know, do a demo and all that kind of stuff. Start of the year when more people want to attend.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's skip to the January one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because I know no one's going to attend. So there's no point.
That's why.
Because it's considering it's like Thursday too, so.
Okay. Cutoff time for batch query events.
Yeah, so this is something. So OSV had an issue. So I linked it there in the issue there in the PR. I mean, well, so I opened up an issue where it was actually doing the wrong query. It was actually parsing the Perl wrong. So when you passed in the SBOM, it would actually parse all the Golang packages wrong if they had a subpath associated with it. So you know, Oliver Chang and I think all the people over there fixed it. So now that you know, they did realize, oh yes, all the subpaths were not actually getting properly parsed. So it was giving back vulnerabilities for versions that didn't actually match. Like it would be a version that's, you know, version that's higher than the actual vulnerability version, right? The fixed in version, basically. So which is not valid. So it was doing that for a lot of all the Golang packages, looks like. And I think it was they were gonna they were going to check this and create like an integration test to make sure that it wasn't happening for anything else. But at least they fixed this. So then what happens is now the vulnerabilities of certified vuln. Now you have a vulnerability in there, right? The wrong vulnerability. And then the next time the certifier runs, now it's going to give you a no vuln back because there's technically no vulnerabilities, right? So when you do the batch query, how the batch query works is that it looks for the max. It looks for so it gives you pass in all the package IDs as a batch. So it's going to check all the package IDs to see if they have certified vulns associated with them. And it's going to group them all together by a package ID, vulnerability ID, and timestamp, and it's going to take the maximum timestamp for all of them, right? So whatever the latest timestamp is, because it could get repeated, right? Because the certifier could run multiple times. Now you will still get the vulnerability back because the query does not understand, because it also filters out all the no vulns. So it's not going to return any no vulns. So only packages that have vulnerabilities that are the latest time will get returned back as part of the query. Does that make sense so far?
Does certified found never return no vuln nodes? I thought it should, right?
It will return a no vuln.
It
But the
will
query,
return no vuln.
but the query ignores no vulns. The query filters out all no vulns.
Which query?
The
GraphQL
batch query
query?
the batch
Oh,
query, yeah, the batch query that I'm fixing that added the cutoff time. Maybe if I step through it, I think it'll make more sense.
No, looking at it, is there a reason why it doesn't return the no vulns?
The reason for it to, so if it returns the no vulns, Okay, I mean, so yes, it can return the no vulns, right? We can have it return the no vulns, that's fine. Still, when this returns, you still get the vulnerability, the old vulnerability ID back still. So it makes no difference if the no vulns return or not. So we can return no vulns, but because the vulnerability ID is unique in that group,
Basically,
because
you
it's been
will
returned in the
pass
past.
you'll pass through it and be like, this package has this vulnerability, and then
And it will
Yep.
also have a no vuln.
yeah, but your policy
that
will
too.
have to say that, oh, like this no vuln has to supersede this old one.
But how do you know that?
I guess the policy you're implying the policy here is we're not trusting certified bonds that are not more than a day old, right?
Correct. That's what I'm saying here. Yeah.
So,
because when you do that, then the latest scan, whatever it returns, is going to be your source of truth, right? In that case, the old vulnerability that was reported, 2 days ago, will no longer be part of the query and will not be returned.
yeah, I mean the data is valid, right? The data just says like it scanned yesterday and it showed CB, but it scanned today and showed no CB, or maybe it scanned today and showed another CB.
Right, exactly. But then you end up with, let's say you get a different vulnerability ID back, right?
Right.
Why can't we just assume that a no vuln overrides all the vulnerability IDs if it's the latest?
I think that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. I mean, no vuln is an assertion that there are 0 vulnerabilities for this package. So if that's the latest certified vuln, then that means that's the only thing that should be returned.
What about a use case where the vulnerability changes? ID
Then
changes.
that's fine, right? Then you have the new.
So if there's no null vuln, then yeah, you can return the new and the old one.
But then no old one's no longer valid, let's say.
So I think if you really cared, if you had the policy that said like I only trust vulnerability reports that are a day old, then it should be it would be a part of the. I think in the GraphQL we have a timestamp, right? Like a time since. Then you will put 20 day to today minus a current time minus 24 hours within that field. Then it would be basically the cut. It would implement the cutoff time. Yeah, I think that's what I'm wondering, whether maybe this is just like the client side adds that field instead of hard coding it into the backend.
That could work also. Okay.
I think we do have it already, right? Do we? Let me check.
No, we don't.
Oh, we don't.
We don't have we don't have the ability to specify when.
I thought maybe we did it for some,
tables.
but not the others. Let me certify bound.
On the non-batch, we do, right?
Oh, only for the non-batch.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
with
We
the
have it
GraphQL,
for
you
after.
can specify whatever field you want. I mean, this is a situation where like GUAC is trying to not be opinionated and just store all the information, but also store where it came from, right? So it's the client's job to figure it out. If I trust something that is old or not old.
Okay, so in this case, if there's any no vulns, just kill everything else. Kill all the other vulnerabilities.
Well, if it's the latest
package.
One. So it could be old no vulns, and then now there are vulns.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it would be basically add the cutoff to the cutoff parameter into
the query,
into the batch query. Yeah,
we can also. Yeah, it can just be, if it's not specified, then it won't be used. We can do both. If we want to do both.
I mean, does the batch query not take a certified vuln object?
It does not. It just takes package IDs.
Yeah, I mean, it should take a whole certified vuln object and do the same thing that the regular one does. Except
This
for the
one is
subject.
specific. This specific query is only for package IDs. Like you can only specify package IDs. It's not a batch query of certified vulns, I'm gonna say. So it's very like, it's specific for that use case. So like, for example, you pass in an SBOM, you get all the package IDs, give me all the vulnerabilities for it. It's kind of the use case that I was going for. So like,
Does it?
for example, for our CLI, like I haven't done it yet, but I'll probably replace the certify, our query vulns via the SBOM URI, for example. We'll just use this instead and spit it out, right? So we could put in,
Yeah. I at the same time where I think like it's something that we just would add to the interface. I also don't wanna, because we're also like moving away from the GraphQL. I don't want to over engineer it too much.
So I mean, we could just, okay, so if a no vuln occurs and it's newer, we remove all previous vulnerabilities from the output.
Yeah, I think
Like
just
that,
document the GraphQL to say that.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think if there would be a way where you would have multiple vulnerabilities and a no vuln, but that can never happen actually.
It is. Yeah, certified bound is for what's the multiplicity of certified bound? It's the top level package, right? It's not
No, it's not. It's the particular package
particular package.
that has the vulnerability.
I think the thing that could be here is like if you're running two different
Yeah, two different
collectors or
scanners.
certifiers from two different sources, right? So in that case, you would want to have a filter on the collector, the source.
Yeah.
And which is a reasonable thing for all of the queries.
Because I think doing take latest is also dangerous, right? Because you could have a package could have multiple CVEs, and if you're just taking the latest ones, also that's yeah. I think the current implementation that you have is good. I think maybe you just have a flag to turn off the behavior.
Which behavior?
Like this opinionated behavior, right? I think this is a opinionated behavior of how we are returning the batch query returns the response.
Well, I mean, we don't have to be, right? So like it makes sense that I get rid of the cutoff time, for example, and I return all the no vulns, and then after the query is done, I gotta do some processing to make sure that if the package returns a no vuln and a vulnerability, compare the times between the two.
On the client side or on the server side?
This should still be on the server side.
Okay, but yeah, I think that's
validate.
just that's like opinionated. I think you just have to document that, and I think that should be fine.
Or okay, so you're saying the client should handle it, then you're saying the client has to validate.
I think ideally,
Is
but
it-
it also is very messy. I don't think it's something that I think
mean,
this is
the
very
client,
GraphQL specific, right? So
yeah.
to me,
Client
this
could
is
handle it, I guess.
the logic that would be handled by the REST API, right? It's like here's an opinionated
Yeah.
policy. The GraphQL
Yeah.
was supposed to just like return the data. But at
So we
this
could do
point,
that. I can change the query. I can change the query to be just return everything, including no vulns, and then the client goes and figures out what's the latest and most valid. That seems like the simplest approach, and probably the best approach, instead of putting all logic into the actual server side. And then this way that this, they can handle it the way they want to. Then they can be like, okay, I only want the latest, or I want a cutoff time of this.
Yeah, because I think what Jeff the scenario that Jeff mentions where you have multiple scanners, like I think that could get a little bit hairy as well. Like one
Yeah.
scanner says this thing doesn't have anything, but the other one says it does, right? Then like
Yeah, exactly. Then who do you trust? Then it's up to the client to decide.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I
and
like
if
that
you can't,
approach. All right.
yeah. If not, you have to embed the entire certified bounce back to say that you only trust citizen collectors and stuff like that. Which is
Yeah.
Okay. We have a couple more minutes.
Oh, this is the next one is also my issue. If you open up the XPDX one real quick, so open up the issue, and then there's on the document has an XPDX Maven, Docker Maven SBOM. If you open that up real quick, this is a question I think for you more, Brendan, is like they specify vulnerabilities in here
as
in the
external
XPDX
references.
document. No.
If anything, it should be in external references. But where do they put the vulnerabilities?
If you search, let's see where to go.
Sorry, Dejan, I don't think we have time today to get to the B2 stuff.
No worries, no worries.
But we had good discussion, so I like the Bex discussion. Where's the vulnerabilities? Should I just search CB?
Hold on. Maybe am I looking at the wrong thing? Well,
top
maybe
level unique artifact count. And package. Okay, so they have based on the error message, it looks like they have SPDX describes.
yeah, never mind. Yes, but never mind. I think I was looking at the wrong SBOM then. So yeah, I thought I saw vulnerabilities. And I was like, this is not according to the spec. And yeah, okay. I think we're fine. This describes everything though. So everything in the SBOM is going to be a top level object.
But I think what this is saying is how big is this document describes how many is this? This is 100 and 200. 271, and then we have 270 packages. So
Yeah, some of them may
artifacts.
not. Some of them may not have the checksum specified, probably algorithm and digest and stuff. Okay, so never mind. So I think we're okay. So
No,
I think we're good on this actually. Never mind.
I'm not sure. I think this is saying that there exists some that the document describes that are not in the list of packages.
No, so it tries to do a matching between the the describes and it tries to get the artifact associated with it. And if those don't match, that's where it's complaining about. But it's not it's just a warning message. It's not like it's gonna end. It doesn't break anything. So that's fine.
Okay. In this case, Oh, it's just a 1. Okay, okay. Yeah, then that's
Yeah, so we're fine. Okay, yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, ignore that. I thought I saw something that I didn't. I was looking at the Cyclone DX one, maybe.
why is a sec fault though? Oh, Cyclone DX1 has a sec fault. Okay. Oh, so maybe it's like I was looking at the SPDX1, so that maybe.
Yeah, I think it was my mistake. So
Well, we still don't know what the issue on the Cyclone DX1 is, right?
we do, yeah. I created a PR for it.
Oh, you
That's fine.
created it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay. Awesome. I'll reply to on the SPDX1.
All right. Thank you, everybody. See you guys later.
See you later.
Well, it's